She moved quickly between the tables, carrying plates stacked high with food, balancing glasses and napkins with practiced ease. The restaurant was alive with the sounds of clinking dishes, soft chatter, and the occasional burst of laughter. Even though she had been working there for years, every shift felt like a challenge. The lunch rush was over now, leaving a steady hum of diners talking quietly and the soft music playing from the corner speaker. She took a deep breath and wiped her forehead, trying to keep a smile on her face. Many people would have thought the work was simple, but she knew better. Each tray, each order, each little request from a customer demanded attention and care. She loved the rhythm of the place, even on the busiest days. Her mind often drifted to the music she loved, imagining the notes and melodies she wished she could play in real life. She had grown up in a small apartment with an old piano in the corner. It was a gift from her grandmother, and although she had never had formal lessons, she learned by listening and watching others play. The piano had always been her secret friend, a source of comfort after long days at school or during quiet nights at home. Yet, it remained a hidden part of her life, tucked away beneath the daily responsibilities and the need to earn a living. Today was no different. She poured a drink for a customer, nodding politely as he complimented her on her service. "Thank you," she said with a small smile. It felt natural to serve, to listen, to smile, even when her mind wandered elsewhere. She glanced toward the small piano in the corner of the restaurant. Most of the customers didn't notice it, and the staff rarely played it. But she always did. She watched it, imagining herself seated there, fingers gliding across the keys, producing music that could make people stop and listen. She shook her head lightly. It was just a dream, she told herself, a pleasant thought to keep her spirits up. Her co-workers were chatting near the counter, laughing about small jokes and weekend plans. She joined them briefly, handing off a tray of desserts. "You should play sometime," one of them said, nudging her lightly. She laughed, brushing it off. "I couldn't," she said softly. "I'm not that good." The comment lingered with her more than she expected. She had always doubted herself, even though she had spent years practicing alone, learning to play by ear, feeling the music rather than reading notes on a page. Sometimes she wondered if anyone would ever get to hear the real depth of her talent, or if it would stay hidden forever, tucked away in quiet moments at home. A small group of regular customers came in, their faces familiar and welcoming. She greeted them warmly, taking their orders without missing a beat. It was a routine she had mastered, but her mind kept drifting back to the piano. She imagined what it would feel like to play in front of others, to hear the notes fill a room instead of just the empty walls of her apartment. The thought made her heart beat a little faster, a mix of excitement and fear. What if she could? She wondered. What if she had the chance to show what she had learned over the years? The afternoon went on with its usual rhythm. Orders came in, drinks needed refilling, dishes piled up, and the music in the background played softly. She moved through the tables with quiet efficiency, always aware of the customer's needs, always keeping a smile. She stole glances at the piano whenever she could, imagining herself there. The more she thought about it, the more she felt a small spark of hope. It was silly, she knew. A waitress, playing piano in front of people? It was not something anyone would expect. But the thought refused to leave her mind. At one point, she had a quiet moment while clearing a table. She leaned against the counter, closing her eyes briefly and letting herself imagine the piano again. She pictured the keys under her fingers, the sound flowing smoothly, beautifully, and naturally. She imagined the expressions of the people around her, the way they might be surprised, moved, maybe even inspired. It was a strange feeling, both exhilarating and terrifying. She had never shared this side of herself with anyone, not even her closest friends. Music was her private world, a place where she could be herself without judgment. A customer called out to her, breaking the daydream. She smiled and went to take the order, jotting it down quickly. The interruption brought her back to reality, but the vision lingered, warming her chest. She realized that no matter how busy or tired she felt, that spark of music inside her refused to fade. It was a part of her that could not be ignored, a quiet force that had shaped her life without anyone even knowing it. She carried that feeling with her as she continued to serve, moving from table to table, balancing plates and drinks, listening and observing, all the while thinking about the piano in the corner. As the evening approached, the restaurant began to fill with more customers. The energy in the room shifted slightly, from quiet conversations to animated chatter. She felt the rhythm of the place, the ebb and flow of activity, and she moved with it. She took orders, refilled drinks, cleared tables, and offered a kind word or smile to everyone she passed. The work was tiring, but it also had a rhythm she found comforting. In the midst of it all, her thoughts kept returning to the piano. She imagined herself sitting there, playing not just for herself, but for everyone in the room. The idea was daring, bold, and exciting. She could almost feel the keys under her fingers, hear the notes filling the space around her, see the surprise and delight on the faces of those who listened. She returned to the counter for a brief moment, leaning against it as she caught her breath. Her co-workers were still chatting, unaware of the storm of thoughts inside her. She felt a small thrill of possibility, the sense that maybe, just maybe, something unexpected could happen today. It was a strange mix of nervousness and hope, a feeling she could not quite name. She brushed her hands on her apron, took a deep breath, and stepped back into the flow of the restaurant. The sun began to dip lower outside, casting long shadows across the room. The atmosphere changed slightly, a soft glow filling the space, making everything seem warmer, more inviting. She moved through the tables with practiced ease, but her mind remained half in her dream, imagining the music she longed to play. She could almost hear it, the notes floating above the chatter, clear and beautiful. It was a powerful, private moment, one that belonged only to her. As the evening continued, she felt a quiet determination growing inside her. She did not know what would happen, or if she would ever get the chance to play in front of anyone, but she knew one thing clearly. The music inside her would not stay silent forever. She would find a way to let it out, to share it, to see if the world could hear what she had carried in her heart for so long. With that thought, she returned to her work, balancing plates and serving customers, but with a small, secret smile that no one else could see. It was the beginning of something new, a spark that would not be extinguished, a dream waiting quietly for the right moment to shine. The restaurant was buzzing with more energy than usual that evening. A private event had been scheduled, and the place was full of people who looked around with interest, noting the details of the room, the arrangements, and the atmosphere. She moved through the tables as usual, taking orders and serving food, but there was a tension in the air that everyone seemed to feel. She noticed the small piano in the corner, polished and shining under the dim lights. It had been a quiet presence during the day, but tonight, somehow, it felt different, like it was waiting for something to happen. She was wiping down a table when a coworker came over, whispering urgently. The pianist who had been scheduled to perform that night had canceled at the last minute. The event coordinator was in a panic, looking around for anyone who could step in. The news sent a ripple of worry through the staff. They all knew that the crowd tonight was not ordinary. They were discerning listeners, people who noticed every detail and expected perfection. Some of them were returning patrons who had seen other performances at this place. The idea of improvising with someone untrained seemed risky. She felt her heart skip a beat when she overheard the conversation. The thought of playing in front of these people made her palms sweat. She had spent years practicing in secret, listening to recordings, and teaching herself songs by ear, but she had never performed for a real audience. The idea terrified her, but at the same time, it stirred a deep excitement inside her. Could this be the moment she had been waiting for? The chance to finally share the music that lived in her heart? She hesitated, glancing at her coworkers. They were speaking in low tones, unsure who could possibly fill in. No one suggested her, and she knew why. She was the waitress, someone who served food, not someone who played the piano professionally. Yet, the more she thought about it, the more she felt a strange courage rising inside her. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I can do it," she said softly, almost unsure if her own words were real. Her coworkers turned to look at her, shock written across their faces. "Are you sure?" the manager asked, eyebrows raised. I think so," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. It was the first time she had ever volunteered for something so bold, and yet the words felt inevitable, as if they had been waiting to escape. The coordinator hesitated for a moment, studying her carefully. "Are you confident?" she asked. She nodded, though her stomach was twisting with nerves. "I'll try," she said, almost to herself. The manager gave a small nod, and that was all the encouragement she needed to step toward the piano. Each step felt heavier than the last, her mind racing with fear and anticipation. What if she failed? What if she made mistakes in front of everyone? She pushed the thoughts aside, telling herself that she had to try, that she could not let the opportunity pass. As she approached the piano, she felt the eyes of the staff on her, then the subtle attention of the guests who had noticed the small gathering near the music corner. She pulled out the bench and sat down, adjusting her position nervously. Her hands hovered over the keys for a moment, feeling their smooth surface under her fingertips. She closed her eyes briefly, remembering all the hours she had spent practicing alone, feeling the music in her heart rather than reading notes on a page. It was comforting, a reminder that she knew this instrument in a way no one else could understand. The first note came out hesitantly, shaky but clear. She took a deep breath and let the music guide her. Her fingers moved more confidently with each passing second, remembering the melodies she had practiced countless times. She was no longer the waitress in the corner of the room. She was a musician, letting her heart speak through the keys. The audience, initially surprised by her presence, began to pay closer attention. Conversations faded into quiet murmurs as people realized something special was unfolding before them. The music grew stronger, more flowing, each note a story, each chord a reflection of years of secret practice. She lost herself in the rhythm, forgetting the fear that had held her back. The sound was beautiful, rich, and unexpected, filling the room with an energy that was both calming and powerful. The audience began to lean in, their eyes widening as they watched the transformation of the quiet waitress into a performer who seemed to pour her very soul into the music. Her colleagues watched in astonishment from the sidelines. They had known her dedication to music in passing, but seeing her play with such emotion and skill was something entirely different. It was more than just technical ability. It was passion, feeling, and a connection to the audience that could not be taught. Whispers spread through the crowd, people exchanging looks of disbelief. Some shook their heads as if trying to convince themselves it was real. The energy in the room shifted, from polite curiosity to full engagement, as the audience became captivated by the performance. She continued to play, building a flow of emotion and rhythm that filled the space. Her hands moved with confidence and grace, telling stories through the music without words. The first tentative notes were gone, replaced by a boldness she did not know she possessed. She felt the pulse of the audience, their reactions feeding her energy, urging her to go further. Each chord, each melody, carried a piece of herself that she had kept hidden for so long, and now it was finally being shared with the world. The initial panic of the staff had been replaced by awe. They whispered to each other, amazed that she had taken a leap so many of them would never dare. The manager stood quietly, watching as her confidence grew, knowing that this impromptu decision was turning into a remarkable moment. The audience was no longer just observers. They were witnesses to a talent they had never expected to see in this setting. Their expressions shifted from polite interest to genuine admiration, and some even held back tears, moved by the depth of feeling in the music. She noticed a few people recording on their phones, their eyes bright with excitement. The thought that her performance might be shared beyond this room never occurred to her at first. She was too immersed in the moment, too focused on expressing everything she had kept inside. Her fingers flew across the keys, each note precise yet filled with emotion. She had never played for anyone like this before, yet the years of quiet practice had prepared her for this exact moment. She felt a sense of liberation, as if she were finally becoming who she had always been meant to be. The audience leaned forward, captivated by her skill and the unexpected beauty of the music. A hush settled over the room, broken only by the notes flowing from her hands. She looked up briefly, meeting the eyes of the guests, and saw expressions of surprise and delight. It was exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. She realized that people were experiencing something rare, witnessing the transformation of an ordinary person into an extraordinary performer right before their eyes. The pieces she played moved seamlessly from soft, delicate melodies to more lively and energetic compositions. Her fingers danced across the keys with precision, her body swaying slightly to the rhythm. She felt a deep connection with every note, and with each chord, she felt her confidence grow. The music was no longer just a private escape. It had become a bridge between her and the people around her, communicating emotions that words could never capture. As she continued, she felt a sense of joy unlike anything she had known. The audience was entranced, and she realized that she had never experienced this feeling alone at home. Playing for others brought a new dimension to her music, making it alive in a way she had only dreamed of. She began to experiment slightly, adding small improvisations she had practiced secretly, testing the crowd's response. Their reactions were positive, encouraging her to explore further, to take risks, and to fully embrace the moment. The music carried on, weaving through different emotions and tempos, reflecting her journey, her fears, her hopes, and her dreams. She played not for recognition or reward but for the pure joy of expression, the thrill of connecting with people in such a profound way. The applause, when it finally came, was thunderous, filling the room with energy and appreciation. People rose to their feet, cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. It was a moment that seemed suspended in time, a memory that would linger long after the last note faded. When she finally stopped playing, she sat quietly for a moment, catching her breath and letting the applause wash over her. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fatigue but from the overwhelming experience of sharing something so deeply personal. She realized that this night had changed her, opened a door she had never dared to approach before. She had stepped out from behind the apron and the routine, revealing a side of herself that had always been hidden, and the world had responded with wonder and admiration. Her co-workers rushed over, offering congratulations, hugs, and words of amazement. The manager shook his head in disbelief, still processing what had just happened. The audience lingered, asking questions, complimenting her skill, and expressing their surprise. She smiled, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and newfound confidence. It had been a leap into the unknown, and she had landed successfully, revealing a talent that no one had expected, including herself. That night, as she cleaned up after the event, she glanced at the piano one last time. It had been more than an instrument tonight. It had been a gateway to a part of herself she had kept hidden. She felt a quiet promise within her, that this would not be the last time she played for others. The experience had shown her that her music could touch people, move them, and inspire them. For the first time, she felt certain that she was meant to share this gift with the world, and that the routine of her daily life could now include moments of extraordinary beauty and possibility. The room was quiet, and for the first time, she felt the weight of the audience's attention. The small piano in the corner, which had seemed like just another piece of furniture during her busy shifts, now felt alive, as if it were inviting her to speak through it. She took a deep breath and let her fingers hover above the keys, her heart beating fast. Every sound she would make now would carry the story of years spent practicing alone, of dreams tucked quietly into the corners of her life. Her first notes were soft, almost hesitant, but even in that hesitation there was a beauty. They floated across the room, catching the ears of the audience, who immediately sensed that something extraordinary was beginning. She felt a shiver run through her as she played, realizing that her hands were moving with a familiarity and comfort she had only known in private. The music was hers, and yet it belonged to everyone who was listening. She leaned slightly closer to the keys, closing her eyes to focus, and let the melodies flow naturally, without forcing them, allowing each note to breathe. The first few measures were a gentle introduction, but the room's energy began to shift. Conversations faded, and even the clatter of dishes seemed distant, replaced by the sound of her music filling every corner. She could feel the audience leaning in, some with surprised expressions, others with awe, as if they were realizing that the humble waitress who had been moving between tables moments ago was now telling a story that transcended words. She smiled slightly, still absorbed in the piano, knowing that the fear that had gripped her only moments before had transformed into something powerful: confidence. With each chord, she poured a little more of herself into the music. She remembered every quiet hour she had spent alone, experimenting with melodies, learning by ear, and letting the music guide her. She remembered the times she had questioned whether anyone would ever hear what she could do, whether her talent would remain hidden forever. Now here it was, alive and vibrant, and the audience could feel it. Some faces were open with amazement, eyes wide, jaws slightly dropped. Others had tears glistening in the corners of their eyes, moved by a performance they had not expected to witness. As she played, she began to feel the rhythm in her body, a natural sway that had nothing to do with posture or technique. The music was a conversation, a bridge between her inner world and the room around her. She experimented with dynamics, letting soft passages whisper and louder sections soar, creating tension and release that held the crowd in suspense. Every note mattered, every pause was deliberate, and the result was a living, breathing performance that drew people in without them even realizing how captivated they had become. The initial nervousness faded completely, replaced by focus and joy. She was no longer thinking about the audience, the event, or the risks. She was only thinking about the music and the way it wanted to unfold. Her fingers glided across the keys with confidence, each movement precise yet filled with emotion. She let herself add small flourishes, gentle improvisations that she had practiced countless times in the quiet of her apartment. The audience responded with subtle shifts, leaning forward, smiling, nodding along with the music. The energy in the room became almost tangible, a shared experience between the performer and the listeners. The waitress had always imagined what it might feel like to play in front of others, but nothing had prepared her for the intensity of the moment. It was more than just music. It was connection. She felt eyes on her, yes, but not in a way that judged. They were observing, participating, absorbing the life she had put into each note. She remembered all the moments she had doubted herself, all the times she had whispered to the empty walls of her apartment that she was not good enough. Now she realized she had been wrong. She was enough. The music proved it. Some members of the audience pulled out their phones, capturing small clips of her performance. She noticed, but it did not distract her. Instead, it reminded her that this moment could reach beyond the walls of the restaurant, that perhaps more people could share in the feeling that had built between her and the listeners here. She let herself get carried away, moving through pieces that ranged from soft and reflective to lively and joyful. The transitions were smooth, almost like breathing, and the audience responded instinctively, swaying slightly, some even mouthing the words of familiar tunes she had woven into her improvisation. There was one point where she paused, letting her hands hover just above the keys. The silence in the room was so complete it almost felt heavy. She drew in a deep breath and then let her fingers fall, creating a sequence of notes that was both unexpected and magical. The sound seemed to fill every corner, wrapping the audience in a wave of emotion. Gasps and quiet murmurs spread through the room. People exchanged glances, unable to believe what they were hearing. She felt a thrill, a mixture of disbelief and exhilaration, realizing that she was performing at a level she had never thought possible in front of anyone. The performance began to grow in intensity, not from force but from natural progression. Each melody was connected, each chord a step in a journey that told a story without words. She felt every note resonate in her chest, and she saw the audience reacting in ways she had only dreamed of. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others watched her with awe, recognizing the raw talent and emotion behind each movement of her fingers. The piano had become a vessel, carrying her inner world out to touch everyone present. She let herself improvise further, blending soft, delicate sequences with bold, confident passages. The contrasts made the music alive, unpredictable, and full of feeling. She had never performed like this before. This was new, spontaneous, and yet it felt completely natural. The audience leaned in closer, their attention undivided. Conversations had ceased entirely, replaced by a deep, collective immersion in the music. She felt a sense of unity, a connection she had never experienced before, and it fueled her performance, giving it depth and power. At one point, she noticed the event coordinator standing at the back, clearly impressed but also relieved that the music was filling the gap created by the canceled performer. She smiled faintly, feeling a sense of pride mixed with humility. She was doing more than just playing. She was creating a moment that would be remembered, a moment that could inspire others to believe that even the most ordinary people could do extraordinary things. Her heart swelled with the realization that her secret talent was no longer secret, that it was touching people in a way that words could not describe. The music continued to flow, effortless yet controlled. She moved through pieces that reflected different emotions: joy, sadness, anticipation, hope. The audience was captivated, their reactions visible in small smiles, widened eyes, and subtle gestures. Some whispered quietly to each other, unable to believe the skill and emotion coming from someone they had assumed was only a waitress. She noticed the expressions, but she stayed focused on the keys, letting the music guide her, letting it speak for itself. As the performance reached a peak, she felt a surge of energy, a perfect alignment of skill, emotion, and audience engagement. Her fingers moved faster, the notes clearer, each chord striking with purpose. The audience could feel the intensity, the care, the depth of feeling that she was putting into every moment. It was an extraordinary transformation. A quiet, humble waitress had become a musician capable of holding an entire room spellbound. She felt a mix of exhilaration and humility, aware that this was something rare, something precious, and she was living it fully. When she finally slowed and returned to a gentle, soft ending, the room remained silent for a heartbeat, as if no one could bear to break the spell. Then, as the final note faded, applause erupted, filling the room with sound, energy, and admiration. The audience rose to their feet, cheering, some clapping so hard that their hands were red, others wiping tears from their eyes. She sat there for a moment, breathing heavily, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and amazement at what had just happened. She had not only performed, she had touched people, connected with them in a way that went beyond words. Her co-workers rushed to her side, their faces full of awe and excitement. The manager shook his head in disbelief, a small smile playing on his lips. The audience continued to offer praise, some approaching her to express their surprise and delight. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had stepped into the unknown, into a space she had feared, and emerged transformed. The piano had become a part of her that night, a bridge between her inner world and the hearts of everyone listening. She knew that this moment would stay with her forever, a defining point in her life, and it had only just begun. The room had been silent during the last few notes, but the applause that followed was deafening. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and some even whistling, their excitement impossible to contain. She remained seated at the piano for a moment, breathing heavily, her hands trembling slightly from the rush of emotion and adrenaline. She had played alone for years, but never had she experienced such a response. The power of her music had reached every person in the room, and the reaction was overwhelming. She allowed herself a small, shy smile, her eyes shining with pride and disbelief. The audience, initially polite and curious, was now completely captivated. Their expressions ranged from astonishment to admiration, with many whispering to each other about the unexpected talent that had just emerged before them. The waitress, now performer, felt a rush of warmth as she realized she had not only played the piano but had moved people in a way she had never imagined. Each note had carried a piece of her, and the audience had accepted it wholeheartedly, responding with the kind of awe and respect that left her speechless. Her co-workers gathered near the back, faces wide with amazement. Some were smiling, others shaking their heads, muttering about how they had no idea she possessed such skill. The manager approached cautiously, trying not to disturb the flow of the room, and whispered words of praise, telling her how proud he was. She nodded, still absorbed in the moment, letting herself feel the satisfaction of sharing a hidden part of herself with others. For years, she had wondered if her talent would ever be noticed, if it would remain buried under the daily grind. Now she knew that it could not stay hidden forever. The performance did not end with applause. It grew into a shared experience between her and the audience. She leaned back slightly, allowing her fingers to explore the keys freely, adding subtle improvisations that flowed naturally from the melodies she had already played. The audience watched intently, some leaning forward in their chairs, others closing their eyes to fully absorb the music. There was an almost tangible energy in the room, a sense of connection that transcended the ordinary, fueled by the authenticity and emotion she poured into every note. People who had been skeptical or indifferent at the start of the event were now engaged, their attention fully captured. They whispered quietly to one another, pointing at her and exchanging amazed looks. Some held their phones, capturing small clips, as if they couldn't believe what they were witnessing and wanted to preserve it for others to see. Yet even the act of recording could not diminish the magic. It only seemed to enhance it, spreading the experience beyond the walls of the restaurant. She felt a small thrill at the thought, realizing that her music could now touch more lives than she had ever imagined. The intensity of her performance increased gradually, yet it never felt forced. Each chord and melody carried an emotion, a story that resonated with those listening. She moved seamlessly between soft, tender passages and bold, powerful sequences, keeping the audience engaged and emotionally invested. The music was a reflection of her own journey. Years of quiet practice, self-doubt, and longing now transformed into a living, breathing performance. Her fingers danced across the keys with a fluidity that seemed effortless, and yet every note was deliberate, calculated, and infused with feeling. The audience began to respond more actively, clapping along to the rhythm at certain points, leaning in to catch every nuance, and even humming softly in recognition of familiar tunes she subtly incorporated. Their engagement gave her a sense of confidence she had never felt before. It was as if the energy from the crowd flowed back into her, encouraging her to explore further, to play with more freedom, and to fully express herself. She realized that music, which had once been her private escape, had now become a powerful tool for connection, allowing her to communicate with people on a deep, emotional level. The room seemed to shrink around the piano, drawing everyone closer to the experience. She felt a strange combination of intimacy and grandeur, the awareness that she was alone at the keys yet completely surrounded by the attention and admiration of the audience. Her movements were fluid, almost like a dance, and each note seemed to reverberate not only through the room but through her own body, a physical reminder of the passion and dedication she had invested over the years. She could see the astonishment on the faces of the crowd, and it filled her with a quiet sense of triumph. Some members of the audience were visibly moved, tears brimming in their eyes as they listened. Others were smiling broadly, unable to contain their joy and amazement at the unexpected talent before them. There was a shared understanding among the listeners, a collective recognition of something extraordinary unfolding in real time. The performance had transformed the atmosphere from casual dining to an immersive experience, where every person felt connected to the music and to the performer. The waitress, now fully a musician, felt the weight of the moment but also its incredible beauty. She continued to play, blending technical skill with emotional depth. Each phrase was carefully considered, yet spontaneous in its execution. She experimented with dynamics, tempo, and rhythm, testing the audience's reactions, and they responded with visible enthusiasm. The music seemed to tell a story without words, conveying emotions that were universally understood: longing, hope, joy, sorrow, and triumph. Every note was a reflection of her inner world, a part of herself she had long kept hidden, and now it was being embraced by everyone around her. Her coworkers, who had watched her timidly approach the piano just moments ago, were now cheering and clapping along with the audience, sharing in the excitement. They had witnessed a transformation that none of them could have predicted, and it left them in awe. The manager quietly observed from the side, marveling at the courage and talent displayed by someone he had only ever seen serve tables. It was a revelation not only for the audience but for everyone who worked alongside her. A reminder that extraordinary talent can be hidden in the most unexpected places. As the performance progressed, she noticed small details she had never paid attention to before. The subtle smiles on children's faces, the gentle tapping of feet in rhythm, the way some adults leaned in closer, as if to catch every nuance. These small reactions encouraged her further, giving her the confidence to explore deeper emotions through the music. She allowed herself to take risks, adding slight improvisations, weaving in melodies that had been with her for years, and watching the audience respond with delight and admiration. It was a conversation without words, a silent dialogue carried entirely by the piano. The crescendo of the performance approached, and she felt the intensity building in her own chest. Her fingers moved faster, yet with precision, each note carefully placed, each chord resonating with clarity and emotion. The audience was fully immersed, caught in the wave of sound and feeling she was creating. She could see their astonishment, their complete engagement, and it filled her with a sense of exhilaration. The performance was no longer just an expression of her talent. It had become a shared experience, a moment of connection that would linger long after the final note faded. As she played the final sequence, the room seemed to hold its breath. The music tapered off gently, leaving a lingering resonance that hung in the air. For a moment, there was complete silence, as if everyone was savoring the last echoes of the performance. Then, the applause erupted, louder and more enthusiastic than before. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and some even calling out words of praise. The sense of astonishment and admiration was overwhelming, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment and joy. Her co-workers rushed forward, offering hugs, congratulations, and words of amazement. The manager approached, shaking his head in disbelief, and praised her for stepping up and delivering such a remarkable performance. The audience members lingered, some asking questions, others expressing their surprise and admiration. She smiled, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and awe. She had not only played the piano but had connected with people in a way she had never thought possible. The performance had revealed a part of herself she had long kept hidden, and now it was appreciated and celebrated. That night, as the restaurant began to quiet down, she glanced at the piano one last time, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. It had been more than an instrument. It had been a bridge to a new part of her life, a means of expressing her passion and connecting with others. She realized that this was only the beginning, that her music could continue to inspire, move, and amaze people. The experience had changed her, and she knew that she would never be the same. The crowd had seen her transformation, and she had seen her own potential unfold in a way that was both thrilling and empowering. It was a night she would never forget, a night that would define her journey as a musician and as a person. The restaurant had returned to its usual rhythm after the excitement of the evening. Yet for her, everything felt different. The memory of the applause, the astonished faces, and the overwhelming energy of the crowd lingered in her mind. She sat quietly at a small table, sipping water, her hands still slightly trembling from the performance. It was as if a door had opened that could never be closed again. The experience had shown her a side of herself she had long kept hidden, and the realization that people could see and appreciate it filled her with a mixture of pride, joy, and disbelief. Her coworkers approached one by one, offering congratulations and smiles. They could not hide their amazement at what they had just witnessed. Many of them had known her for years as a diligent, quiet waitress, never suspecting the depth of talent she possessed. Now they saw her in a new light, and it was clear that this performance had left an impression on everyone. Some asked questions about how she had learned to play, how long she had practiced, and whether she had performed before. She smiled softly, answering honestly that she had always loved music and had taught herself in private. The simplicity of her response contrasted with the profound impact of her performance, emphasizing that extraordinary talent often comes from ordinary beginnings. The event coordinator came over, speaking quickly but warmly. "You were incredible," she said, her eyes bright. "I can't believe you just stepped up like that. We have to do something with this." The words sent a thrill through her chest. She had never expected recognition beyond the applause in the room, and now someone was hinting at future possibilities. She felt a spark of excitement, imagining what doors might open as a result of this one spontaneous act. The idea that her music could reach beyond the restaurant, touch more people, and change her life in ways she had never dreamed of made her heart race. Several audience members lingered, approaching her to express their admiration. Their words were simple yet sincere. "That was beautiful," one said, eyes shining. "I've never heard anything like it in my life." Another added, "You have to keep playing. The world needs to hear this." She nodded, smiling, feeling both humbled and encouraged. For years, she had played for herself, unsure if anyone would ever appreciate her efforts. Now, not only had she received acknowledgement, but she had also inspired people. It was a feeling unlike any she had experienced, and it fueled her desire to continue sharing her music. As the night wore on, the crowd gradually dispersed, leaving her in the quiet of the restaurant. She returned to the piano, sitting down and letting her fingers hover above the keys. She did not play immediately. Instead, she reflected on what had happened. Every note she had played, every improvisation, every emotion had connected her to the people around her in a way that transcended language. She realized that music had a power she had only glimpsed in her private practice, a power to unite, to inspire, and to move people deeply. The thought filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. Her mind wandered to the possibilities ahead. She imagined invitations to perform at other events, opportunities to showcase her talent, and even the chance to record her music. The idea was exhilarating, but it also brought a touch of nervousness. She had spent her life in routine, and the prospect of stepping into the wider world of music was both exciting and intimidating. Yet, the memory of the crowd's astonished faces, the applause, and the shared energy reassured her. She could do this. She had already taken the first step, and nothing could take it back. The next morning, she arrived at work with a lightness in her step. Even the familiar routine felt different, now infused with the knowledge that her life had changed. Customers greeted her as usual, but some still whispered about the performance they had witnessed. Her coworkers were eager to hear every detail, asking how she had felt, what she had thought during the performance, and whether she would play again. She smiled and shared her feelings honestly, admitting that it had been both terrifying and exhilarating. The conversation brought a sense of camaraderie and support, reinforcing that her talent was now recognized and valued by those around her. Word of the performance spread quickly. Some audience members shared videos online, and soon, messages of admiration and encouragement began to arrive. People expressed disbelief that someone who had appeared to be an ordinary waitress could possess such extraordinary skill. The feedback was overwhelming, yet it filled her with a sense of validation. She realized that her music had touched people in ways she had never imagined, and that the potential to reach even more listeners was real. The thought inspired her to practice more diligently, to refine her skills, and to explore new compositions, knowing that her audience, however small or large, would be waiting. She began to see the restaurant in a new light. It was no longer just a place where she worked. It had become a stage, a space where dreams could emerge unexpectedly. The small piano in the corner, once just a piece of furniture, was now a symbol of possibility and opportunity. She spent her breaks sitting at the keys, experimenting with new melodies and recalling the exhilaration of the previous night. Each note reminded her that her passion for music could no longer remain hidden, that it had a purpose beyond personal enjoyment. The realization was empowering, filling her with determination and hope. Opportunities started to present themselves. Local event organizers reached out, having seen videos of her performance online. Invitations to play at small gatherings, community events, and even private parties began to arrive. Each offer was a new challenge, a chance to step further into the world of music and performance. She felt both nervous and thrilled at the possibilities, understanding that each opportunity was a chance to grow, to connect with new audiences, and to continue sharing the gift she had carried in secret for so long. The once distant dream of being recognized for her talent was now becoming a tangible reality. Her co-workers continued to offer support and encouragement, reinforcing her confidence. They reminded her of the courage it had taken to step forward in the first place, and they celebrated every success with her. The manager, too, expressed pride, noting that her performance had brought unexpected attention to the restaurant and inspired everyone who had witnessed it. The sense of community and support strengthened her resolve, making her realize that she was not alone in this journey. She could embrace her music fully, knowing that others believed in her as much as she believed in herself. With time, she grew more confident in performing for larger audiences. Each experience built upon the last, strengthening her skills and deepening her emotional connection to the music. She learned to balance nerves with excitement, to let the music guide her, and to trust her instincts. The thrill of performing, the joy of seeing people moved by her talent, became a driving force in her life. She began to envision a future where music could play a central role, a life that combined her everyday responsibilities with the extraordinary experiences that performing brought. Despite the growing attention and opportunities, she remained grounded. She continued working at the restaurant, finding comfort in the familiar routine and in the connection with regular customers. The balance between work and music gave her stability, reminding her that extraordinary moments could emerge even within ordinary life. Each performance became an opportunity to express herself, to share her passion, and to inspire others, all while remaining true to who she was. As months passed, her life transformed gradually but meaningfully. She gained recognition not only for her technical skill but also for the emotion and authenticity she brought to every performance. Audiences admired not just the music but the story behind it, the tale of a humble waitress who had discovered and embraced her talent, sharing it with courage and grace. The journey had begun with a single step, a moment of bravery, and it continued with every note she played, every audience she touched, and every opportunity she embraced. Looking back, she realized how far she had come. From quiet hours of private practice to performing for captivated audiences, the journey had been filled with challenges, self-doubt, and moments of hesitation. Yet each step had been necessary, building the foundation for her growth and the realization of her dreams. She felt gratitude for the people who had believed in her, for the experiences that had shaped her, and for the music that had always been her companion and guide. Her story became an inspiration to others, a reminder that talent can be hidden in the most unexpected places, and that courage can lead to extraordinary outcomes. She understood now that the fear of stepping forward could never outweigh the joy of embracing one's passion. With each performance, she celebrated the journey, honored the music, and embraced the possibilities that lay ahead. The waitress who had once moved quietly among tables had become a musician who could touch hearts, change lives, and inspire dreams, all through the power of music and the courage to take a single, bold step.